They tried to hide the body in plain sight. Only those who looked closely could notice that something was wrong. The gravestone from 1913 said that a stillborn child was buried there. There should have been visible traces of digging. They worked hard for almost 5 hours. In the dim light of a mercury lamp in the tool shed, the work progressed slowly. When they finished their secret work, it was well past midnight. They were clearly shaken by the events of that evening. What had happened would haunt them for many years to come. The pub was still open, and they celebrated their success. After drinking a last glass, they left the pub and went home to their families. Thanks to their efforts, the world had become a much safer place. The wind blew, sometimes gently, sometimes strongly. On one such day, the wind carried a tree seed. The seed got stuck in the dug-up earth near a gravestone in the cemetery. A few days later, a tiny sprout emerged from the seed, much thinner than the hair above your grandmother's lip. Over the years, the little tree grew. Its tiny roots dug deeper and deeper into the ground. One of them eventually hit the corner of a wooden box. Dividing and growing, the root penetrated the box. The tree grew and became heavier. The roots also grew, and those that penetrated the wooden box broke it apart. Several more years passed, the box rotted away, and the weight of the tree pressed down on it, and one of the splinters pierced the body bag. The sudden and sharp drop in temperature instantly killed the tree. The temperature returned as quickly as it had disappeared. Untouched for 20 years, the tree shed its leaves in a matter of days. Trees die every day. No one would have guessed that just a week ago, this tree was as healthy as any other in the cemetery. My name is James Robert Adams, Jr. Everyone calls me J.R. I'm a second-generation detective with the Whitville Police Department. My father was also a detective in the same police department and retired 10 years ago. He now lives in a nursing home because he has dementia. I visit him several times a week and share details of unsolved crimes with him. He doesn't always know what to do with the TV remote. On a good day, he can remember the smallest details of a long, unsolved crime. That's the disease that has struck him. My wife Loretta and I have been married for 18 years. We have 2 children who are in high school. My mother never liked Loretta. She said it was because of her eyes. My mother died a few years ago of lung cancer. Loretta made it clear that she would not help me with my father and his house. In a way, I can't blame her. She was never accepted in their home. I would like to say that our marriage is strong and that our love grows every day. But that's not true. And I can't say exactly why. I know my work schedule interferes with my family life, but it's my job. She doesn't have to do all that volunteer work, but it seems to make her happy. Loretta works full-time in an office and recently got a promotion. Many little things annoy me. A few months ago, I bought Loretta some expensive earrings with dangling angels encrusted with diamonds. She wore them that evening and once more. Even then, she only wore them after I asked her to. Last week, I asked her to wear them again, but she searched for them for a while and said she had lost them. There are unexplained gaps in her schedule that cause the kids to ask friends for rides. My co-workers warn me that she may be having an affair. I am inclined to deny it. It seems impossible to me. I have analyzed the timeline of what she says she does and the mixed signals that follow. Sometimes it makes me wonder. If there have been changes in her sexual attraction or behavior, I haven't noticed them. Something is wrong, but I'm hesitant to dig deeper. I don't travel for work, and neither does she. We are both very involved in our children's sports programs. These competitive teams are expensive. We hope it will pay off when it's time to pay for their college education. On Wednesday evening, after the sudden death of the tree, Rhonda and Mark met at a pub across from the cemetery. She was cheating on her husband. Mark was her colleague and a womanizer. He had heard that she was unhappy with her husband. It only took a few days for them to sleep together for the first time. They had been doing it for the past 3 months. After a couple of beers, they hurried to their rented room. Rhonda took off her top and bra, and then they made love. Mark loved the feeling of her writhing. She continued to tremble and began to gasp for air. Mark, very concerned, rolled off her. She stared at the ceiling and was still trembling. The only sound she made was a quiet squeak as she gasped for air. With her eyes and mouth open, her life was coming to an end. Mark panicked. "Rhonda! Rhonda! Talk to me! Are you okay? Oh, shit!" He put his ear to her chest and heard nothing. He checked for a pulse but couldn't find one. He called 911 and got dressed while he waited. Shortly after 8 p.m., I was called to a suspicious death at a motel near a cemetery. I was on a 2-week shift. Although the scene looked normal for a heart attack victim, the paramedics disagreed. They believed there were no symptoms of a heart attack. In their opinion, she had died of fear. Mark's interview proved to be a waste of time. They had been having sex, and she couldn't control her body until she froze in that position. The motel room was a little chilly, but I attributed it to the air conditioning. As I was about to leave, the temperature in the room suddenly rose to the same level as outside. I thought it was strange, but didn't think much of it. The night was quiet, so I didn't have to wait long for the coroner. The medical examiners finished their work, and the hotel room was turned over to the owner around the time my shift ended. A lot of people die in motels. This case was a little strange, but not so strange that I couldn't sleep. The unpleasant task of informing the husband of his wife's death and the circumstances of her death was handled by a patrol officer. The next day, I spoke with the coroner, who agreed with the paramedics' conclusion. Rhonda did not die of a heart attack. She suffocated, but there were no marks on her neck or body. It appeared to be an allergic reaction to something. I contacted Mark and asked him again how he had spent his time with Rhonda. According to him, they hadn't even eaten peanuts while drinking beer. My attention shifted to the shooting from the passing car, and Rhonda quickly faded from my memory. But the following Wednesday, everything changed. Cindy and Jason were sitting in the same taxi that Mark and Rhonda had been in 7 days earlier. Cindy was Jason's secretary. Instead of being at a client meeting 3 hours away, they were here to continue their affair. Jason's wife believed he would be home by 10 p.m. Deep down, she was sure Jason would leave his wife for her. Jason, who had gone through 5 secretaries in less than 4 years, had no such intentions. Each of them was just a sex toy to him until they got too smart. His threats to kill them if they told his wife always worked. After drinking beer and eating a bowl of peanuts, they giggled their way to the motel. It wasn't the same room where Rhonda had died. It had been repainted. Hopefully, they had at least thrown out the sheets that had been on the bed that night. Jason quickly undressed, and Cindy followed suit. Cindy lost her composure. "Mark! Oh my God, Mark!" She rummaged through her purse, found her phone, and dialed 911. She couldn't speak coherently, and the operator had a hard time getting the information needed to send an ambulance. For the second week in a row, I arrived at the scene to find a naked body with eyes and mouth wide open. The story was the same. A couple in love had been having sex in a motel room when one of them reached orgasm. According to Mark last week and the frightened woman today, as soon as they started having sex, their lover continued to shake, twitch, and gasp until he simply stopped moving. As with last week, it seemed that the temperature in the motel room was much lower than one would expect. Although the picture looked normal for a heart attack victim, the ambulance crew believed otherwise. They believed there were no symptoms of a heart attack. In their opinion, he died of fear. Déjà vu. It was a different ambulance crew, and their observations were almost identical. Cindy's interview proved fruitless. I thought it was strange again, but this time I didn't let the thought go. I checked and found that the air conditioner was turned off. We had to wait about 90 minutes for the coroner. The medical examiners finished their work, and the hotel room was handed over to the owner. My shift ended an hour early, but solving this case became my top priority. Like Rhonda's death, this case was a little strange, but not so much that it kept me up at night. The unpleasant task of informing the wife of her husband's death and the circumstances surrounding it fell to a patrol officer. The next day, I spoke with the coroner, who agreed with the paramedics' conclusion. Jason did not die of a heart attack. He suffocated, but there were no marks on his neck or body. It appeared to be an allergic reaction to something. I contacted Cindy and found out how she had spent her time with him. She said they had lunch at Subway, then had a beer and some peanuts at a bar before checking into the motel. The coroner also received the results of Rhonda's blood test. They didn't provide any clues, which was disappointing. A healthy woman has a seizure for no apparent reason, and then dies. No signs of needle marks, blunt trauma, or bruises. It was a hopeless case from the start. On Friday, I called my father to ask him to have lunch with me. Sometimes he retreats into his own little world. Today, he was willing to help me with some things. It's easy to quit your job, but it's hard to give up something you've been doing for so many years. I'd never seen him react like that when I mentioned the 2 unsolved deaths at the motel. He turned pale. "JR, do me a favor. Drive me to the cemetery near that motel, now!" "What's wrong, Dad?" "Drive now!" It took us only 30 minutes to get to the back of the cemetery. Dad jumped out of the car. He walked purposefully, his steps quick and light. We approached the grave of a stillborn child. The headstone read 1913. "Where the hell did this tree come from? Damn, there's a hole in the ground. It's come up again." "Dad, calm down. What's come up again?" "An evil spirit." "I've never heard of that. What's an evil spirit or whatever you call it?" "Take me home to my house, not this hole you locked me in." He quickly returned and waited for me in the passenger's seat. As I drove, I could hear him muttering, "Damn, damn, damn." I followed him into the house where he had lived with my late mother. He hadn't lived there for about a year and a half. The house smelled musty. He hurried into his study and pulled out the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet. Kneeling down, he reached deep into the cabinet. Finally, he pulled out a zippered bag. "Come with me to the kitchen." I followed him like a puppy. He carefully took out something that looked like a very old document. There were several sheets and scraps of paper fell to the floor. The rolled-up pages were very fragile. The handwriting resembled an ancient scroll. "Here it is. The Curse of Infidelgeist. You can call me crazy, but I'll tell you a story. About 20 years ago, a series of deaths of lovers began in motels near the cemetery. I was assigned to the case, and it was unlike any I had encountered before. I knew of 9 deaths before I put an end to it. When you investigate cases like this, you always suspect that the second or third victim is a copycat. But they were all equally strange, and the only thing they had in common was that they all stopped at a pub before they died. Oh, and they all died on Wednesdays. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and goosebumps ran down my forearms. I kept an eye on that pub. I saw 3 unfortunate couples leave the pub before one of them met their death. No one was following them. One night, when one of the couples came into the pub, I was already inside. They had a beer, left a 10 on the table, and left. I followed them and watched as they crossed the parking lot and entered a motel. I stayed in my car doing paperwork when I heard a 911 call. I was the first on the scene. Everything was the same as in the other cases. For the next few weeks, I hardly slept. Before I changed tactics, there were 2 more murders. I focused on the husband of the first victim. His wife had died first, and this guy was strange. He was into the occult and witchcraft. I took him to the station, but he had an ironclad alibi. The day after the interrogation, I received a package with my name on it. "You can take it. It says here that you can resurrect a creature that will suck the life out of adulterers. The infidel geist enters the body and remains there until the victim dies. About an hour later, the infidel geist always returns to its place of birth. Look in the bag. There's a note." I took it out. He was resurrected in a pub on 52nd Street and York Avenue. "Okay, Dad, let's say I believe this story about the infidel geist, but what does the cemetery have to do with it?" "If you read these papers, you'll find out how to catch the infidel geist. On a moonless night, you have to behead your victim. then placed several occult symbols and other strange objects in a container with the victim's headless body. This must be done before the infidel Geist leaves the corpse. 20 years ago, my partner and I left a pub and followed a couple. They must have been poor because they just went behind a trash can and started having sex. We stayed in the shadows, and then we heard the woman scream and run away, taking her clothes with her. We saw a man lying on his back with his pants down. His mouth and eyes were wide open. I ran to the car and grabbed a body bag and a bag of occult items I had prepared in advance. In record time, we stuffed the guy into the bag and put him in the trunk of my car. We put his head under the car. I drove through the service entrance of the cemetery and found the grave of a stillborn child. It took us about 5 hours to bury the guy. We put him in a makeshift plywood box that my partner had made in advance. He kept it next to the office building in case of such an emergency. That damn tree must have pierced the coffin and released an evil spirit. What a story. I sat there in a daze and quickly flipped through the pages. Who would believe this nonsense? I was starting to believe it myself. The 2 deaths described in the file were similar to the ones my father had told me about. Dad went to the bathroom and I followed him. On the back of the sink, I found a pair of earrings. The missing earrings with angels were found. Since Loretta never helps me with my parents' house, my stomach twisted and my heart pounded. Calming down, I led my father back to the sink. My shift was just starting, and the evening was very quiet. I looked through both cases and requested the documents from 20 years ago. The similarity was too great to ignore. Whatever had happened 20 years ago was now repeating itself. I grabbed my bag and drove to the pub. It was Friday night, and the place was packed. I read the occult curse. It would take serious research to understand it. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end when I read how the adulterer's life would end. His lungs would contract, he would start to suffocate and writhe in convulsions. After death, his lungs would relax, and everything would look normal. Apparently, the trigger was when the adulterer was forced to think about his mistress's genitals, and his heart began to beat faster. I called Mark and Cindy to see if they remembered which table or booth they had been drinking beer at. They both pointed to the booth between the side door and the restroom. The neon lights of the beer signs reflected on the sidewalk as I entered to the sound of terrible singing. It was karaoke night. The table I had hoped to watch from was occupied by the DJ. I left for the evening. My month's shift was over, but I was willing to work overtime as a freelancer. The more I thought about the earrings, the more disgusted I became. The only reasons she took them off weren't very appealing. I had to beg her to put them back on. But her lover didn't? Who the hell was she sleeping with? It infuriated me that she was defiling my parents' home. For the next few nights, I avoided Loretta. I wrote down everything I didn't like and everything that bothered me. I logged into our mobile account and looked at Loretta's activity. I wrote down the unknown numbers that had called and sent messages. A pattern emerged, and it wasn't hard to figure out. During night shifts, especially when one of the kids had a game, there were calls and messages. I found 2 numbers with a recurring theme. The account history only covered the last year, and this had been going on for at least that long. Now I needed to find out who those numbers belonged to. I used all legal means, but both numbers remained a mystery. Given the periodic internal audits, I didn't want to use city resources to pursue my personal demons. Loretta seemed concerned when I refused sex all week. At that point, I didn't feel any desire for her. The following Wednesday evening, I found a spot at a bar. 2 girls were sitting on stools, and I soon struck up a conversation. I tried my best to turn off my detective mode, but to no avail. As soon as I asked too many questions, they fell silent and moved to a secluded corner. I gave the bartender my credit card and told him I might be coming and going throughout the evening. Loretta didn't want me to leave for the whole evening, but I told her it was important and work-related. I offered to take her with me if she wasn't sure. She declined. Around 6:30 p.m., the couple, who had been acting very affectionate, sat down in a booth between the side door and the restrooms. They ordered nachos and a pitcher of beer. The woman looked at her cell phone several times, but that was the only thing I noticed. They took turns going to the restroom, paid the bill, and left the pub. As they walked past me, I felt a cold breeze. They got into a pickup truck and drove away. It was just after 8 p.m. and the pub was empty. I decided that one night was enough. Charlene and Dave were enjoying their nachos. They had tried them last week. It was a little chilly in the pub tonight. Dave's wife was at her mother's house helping her father-in-law. Charlene, recently divorced due to infidelity, just wanted sex. They had been secretly seeing each other for the past 6 weeks. Dave was proud that he had managed to keep their affair a secret. Fortunately, the side street they were on was quiet, like a ghost town. Dave's pickup truck crashed into a huge oak tree. Paramedics found 2 dead people. Dave stood frozen with his mouth open and his eyes wide. Charlene's head was in his lap, crushed by the steering wheel. When I picked up my diary on Thursday morning, someone called out to me, "Hey, JR, didn't you have a case where the corpses had their eyes and mouths wide open?" Yes, I did. 2 weeks in a row. Why do you ask? There was a car accident last night. 2 people were killed, but the coroner said the driver was dead before the crash. His eyes and mouth were wide open. Any leads? Maybe. Is there a file on this case? I found the file and stared at the IDs. It was a couple who had been eating nachos and driving away in a truck. My stomach churned. I read the details about the victims. Both were dead, although only the man's eyes and mouth were wide open. I believed it. I called my father and arranged to meet him for lunch. "I'm glad you could make it, Dad." "How could I not?" Last night, IT struck again. 2 people were killed, but only the man's eyes were wide open. He was an active adulterer. They weren't even having sex at the time, just driving somewhere in his truck. Has anything like that ever happened to you? Number that changes things. How? How are you going to catch a T if it's gone? Why do I have to stop it? You have to. Imagine the panic if this happens for 20, 50, or 100 weeks in a row. Dad was very upset. He blamed himself for not burying Infidel Geist properly. I spent several days looking for the man whose wife was the first victim 20 years ago. He had moved several times and was now dead. When his body was found, it appeared that he had been tortured. He had ritual burns characteristic of occultism. I guess when you play with fire... I asked to be put back on my Wednesday shift. On Wednesday, around 6 p.m., I greeted the bartender and gave him my credit card. A girl who was too young to drink was sitting in a suspicious booth. After checking her ID, the waitress brought her iced tea. I asked the waitress how old she was, and she replied that she was 18. It was already around 7 p.m. when I needed to use the restroom. When I came out, I was shocked to see my neighbor Tim sitting with the 18-year-old girl. He was so engrossed in her that he didn't notice me. Unfortunately for Tim, she had chosen a table between the side door and the restrooms. I decided to wait outside. When they left the pub, she put her arms around his shoulders. Tim simply drove into a dark corner of the motel parking lot. I watched them silently for about 10 minutes until the blonde jumped out of the car screaming for someone to call 911. She grabbed her panties, bra, and blouse from the car. She put on her panties, then quickly put on her bra and blouse. I went into the pub and paid my bill. I waited for the ambulance. The ambulance arrived quickly. They found Tim with his eyes and mouth wide open. I offered to take responsibility to the patrol officer. I drove Tim home and broke the news to his wife, Marilyn. She was in shock, and her 2 teenage daughters joined her in her grief. I finished my shift and returned home. Loretta was already asleep. She never waits up for me. My teenagers were up early because they are very active in school. When I went to the kitchen for breakfast, they were already gone. "Good morning, sleepyhead. How was your night?" "Pretty lousy. One of the victims was Tim from next door." I had interrogated many criminals, so I believed I was pretty good at reading body language. Loretta's movements immediately caught my attention. She looked as if she had been punched in the stomach. Her eyes filled with tears, and her voice trembled. "My God, what happened?" "He was found dead in the motel parking lot. He was with a young woman. They suspect murder." Once again, Loretta's body language gave her away. When she heard my words, she became alert. Could she have been cheating on me with Tim? "I need to stop by Marilyn's." A minute later, she ran out of the house. I left for work without saying goodbye to Loretta. When she discovered I was gone, we got into a heated argument. She was very upset when I couldn't calm her down. If what I believed was true, she could go to hell. I found Tim's folder with his documents, and we played Yahtzee. One of my mysterious phone numbers belonged to Tim's disposable phone. Tim and Loretta met in the evenings to play games. Unfortunately, only one of the two unknown numbers belonged to Tim. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots. The girl had started an affair with Tim and didn't realize she was just one of his mistresses. I went to my daughter's game. After that, we went out to dinner as a family, then hurried home. I was in a dark mood. I wanted to scream. My heart ached so much. How could she? "Are you okay, honey? You've been quiet all evening." "I think I'm coming down with something. I'm going to lie down on the couch. I don't want you and the kids to catch it. They have regional competitions coming up, and they're both hoping to make it to the state finals this year." "Is there anything I can do or bring you?" "No, thanks." I couldn't concentrate on what I had to do. I spent several hours with my father. He begged me to catch the infidel Geist and bury him in a concrete tomb. He offered to take a turn standing guard. We both giggled because he always fell asleep. Standing guard for hours was simply impossible. "Okay, Dad. What do I need to put with the body to paralyze the infidel Geist?" He grabbed his yellow notebook and wrote down 4 things with a brief explanation and a few crude drawings to help me. I compared his list to the document about the curse. By the next Wednesday, I had a plan that was starting to make sense. I spent that night at the bar. I had a long and pleasant conversation with the owner. He filled my glass with colored water all night long. One of the bar's regulars tried her best to interest me in a night of pleasure. I refused, but for the first time since I met Loretta, I really believed it could happen. Every time someone sat down in the cursed booth, I hoped. I left at midnight without ever seeing Infidel Geist in action. For the first time in 5 weeks, no one slept with their eyes open. After a very cold week at my house, it was Wednesday. "JR, what the hell is wrong with you? You've been avoiding me all week and haven't said I love you once. We haven't made love in weeks." "Loretta, if your life depended on it, would you tell me the truth?" "What? What are you talking about?" "It's a simple question. If your life depended on it, would you tell me the truth?" "Of course." "Okay. Tell me, have you ever cheated on me?" "JR, what have you been smoking?" "Never. I repeat, never. Why are you asking me this?" "I just heard something. Forget I asked. How about we go out to dinner?" "What about the kids?" "The kids? Mom and I are going out to dinner. Be good. I'll just grab a sweater." The pub wasn't very crowded. It was always like that on Wednesdays at 6 in the evening. I found a cozy table between the side door and the restrooms. After we ordered drinks and nachos, I gave Loretta one last warning. "Loretta, I want to tell you a story. I'm investigating a series of very unusual deaths. It's a fascinating mystery. Over the past 5 weeks, 4 times, only on Wednesdays, there has been a mysterious death. I've devoted all my time to this case. Strangely, some kind of ghost takes control of the victim and squeezes the life out of them." "A ghost? Come on, JR, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. I've managed to compile a profile that fits all the victims. Every Wednesday, the victims sat at the same table at around the same time. 2 weeks ago, Tim and his young admirer were sitting here." Loretta looked frightened. "Then why the hell are we sitting here?" Calm down, Loretta. Only those who cheated on their spouses died. Everyone else who sat here is alive. I know I never cheated on you, and you assured me that you never cheated on me either. By the way, did I find your earrings? The temperature suddenly dropped. Loretta was clearly shaken when I handed her the earrings. I don't know anything about Tim. Where did you find the earrings? In the bathroom at my father's house. I wonder why you were there. I also wonder why Tim's phone was ringing on your cell phone. I really hope you weren't lying about cheating on me. That ghost is deadly accurate, and I would never put the mother of my children in danger. I didn't smile at Loretta. It was more of a smirk. She was beginning to understand the seriousness of my words. You're a monster! You knew! You believed it so much? Loretta ran out of the booth, and I heard her vomiting in the ladies' room. When she didn't return after 5 minutes, I asked one of the bar's regulars to check on her. The medical examiner determined Loretta's time of death as 6:44 p.m. I pretended to be stunned. The funeral home did a good job of making her face look decent. Corpses in coffins never look alive, and Loretta was no exception. I took time off work to deal with the aftermath of Loretta's sudden death. On the Wednesday after she died, there was another mysterious death connected to the pub. My first encounter with life after Loretta's death came very quickly. Every day people came by with trays of food. My daughter's best friend, Kelly, and her mother rang our doorbell. Kelly distributed the food, and as soon as the teenagers pounced on it, we were left alone in the kitchen to clean up. I was loading the dishwasher when I felt Kelly press her chest against my back. She pressed herself against me and wrapped her arms around my waist. JR, sooner or later you're going to need a woman. I've been divorced for 5 years. I'm not looking for a husband, but I need a man in my life. I felt her right hand slide under my shirt. I may be ready for you sooner than you think, Kelly. It sounds like you're ready. I laughed. Would you believe me if I said I wasn't? I'll bring dinner again tomorrow. Try to be more prepared. Let's go to the bathroom. I'll help you take care of that problem. Like a teenager waiting for prom, I was practically useless at work the next day. The thought of having sex with another woman had me aroused all day. Kelly was everything I could ever dream of. She was warm, tender, and hungry for sex. Loretta hadn't been like that in a long time. We lay together in bliss after sex. JR, I have a few girlfriends. Don't think you're the only one. I believe you'll have more than one lover, too. If you're interested, I have a friend who needs some love. Natalie, Kelly's friend, made me feel like a king. Life was good again. A few days after the funeral, I got a call from a number I felt I should know, but couldn't remember. Hi, JR. It's Todd, Loretta's boss. Hi, Todd. What's up? We packed up Loretta's things. Can I bring them over or will you pick them up? Just leave them on the porch. Thanks, Todd. That evening I was drinking beer when it dawned on me. I knew that number because it was Loretta's second secret number. I wondered if those calls were work-related or personal. I needed to do some more investigating. I looked through Loretta's email and found a folder with saved messages. They say women cheat for emotional reasons. Todd had not only won her heart. Revenge was not just a possibility. It was inevitable. My investigation revealed that Todd was younger than me and had 2 school-aged children. I spent Wednesday afternoon working on an excavator and a cement mixer. It's amazing what you can accomplish with a few traffic cones and a fake construction company sign stuck on a truck. If my calculations were correct, the extra water I used to mix the cement would give me time to act. Otherwise, I would have a hole filled with cement and nothing else. I had to finish by 8 p.m. In clothes soaked with sweat, dirt, and cement, I put on my best fake mustache, sideburns, and hunting cap. I found Todd sitting at the bar. I took him into the booth between the side door and the restrooms. We talked about how much we would miss Loretta. Tell me, Todd, how long have you two been having sex? In a panic. Listen, JR, I didn't start it. As soon as I sensed the change in mood, I asked Todd to step outside because I had something to show him. I chose that night because it was a full moon. Todd wasn't prepared for me to put a gun to his side. We crossed the street and quickly disappeared into the dark night. Almost begging, "JR, she came at me. She wanted a promotion and said I wouldn't regret it. I kept putting off the promotion, and she offered herself to me several times. Please don't kill me. I have a wife and 2 little kids who depend on me." "I can tell you 2 things, Todd. I'm not going to kill you, but you're probably going to die within the next 15 minutes. I told him the story of the unfaithful spirit. He tried to run away, but I tripped him up. Before he could get up, he started choking, and within a minute he was dead. Just like Loretta. I chopped off his head with an axe from my father's garage. I put Todd's naked body in a body bag. I made sure the occult items were still in the bag. I zipped the bag and started taping it shut when the bag started shaking. Scared? Doesn't even come close to what I felt. I looked down and made sure his head was still far from the bag. I looked at the shaking bag and tried to calm down. I lifted the bag and pushed it with my shoulder into a deep hole filled with concrete. The bag slid down and slowly disappeared. I covered the last half-meter to the surface with a mixture of salt and gravel. Nothing could grow there. A metal detector wouldn't find anything. Todd's car was found near the pub. His head and clothes were in the front seat. His cell phone was not found. I participated in the investigation. Surveillance camera footage did not help identify the stranger who was with Todd. The bartender said he had never seen either of these guys before. The axe handle sank to the bottom of the lake near the park. I burned the axe handle and melted Todd's phone. It took several days to find my father in a lucid state. "Dad, you look great. Want to go for a drive?" "Sure, but what about the kids?" As expected, the suddenness and shock of it all shook them to their core. But I made them play in the regional competition. I told them Loretta wouldn't have wanted it any other way. "What really happened, son?" "She died from vomiting." "No, seriously, JR, you didn't even come close to mourning." "That evening I took her to a pub for dinner. It was Wednesday, if you remember." His shocked expression made me smile. Almost stuttering, I asked, "Really?" "Yes, twice. Both of her lovers met the same fate. The second one, if he's lucky, will never be found. By the way, you didn't warn me that the body bag was moving." With a guilty smile, I replied, "I didn't warn you? I've had nightmares about that for years." I stopped near the cemetery. Weeds were already sprouting from the freshly dug earth. "I just wanted you to know that your innovative work with Infidelegiast has paid off again. Last Thursday was supposed to be his swan song. How about spending the night with me? It's Halloween, and I believe we'll have a lot of kids coming by for candy and treats." "With pleasure, son." "Well done." "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad." Sometimes I drive past the cemetery and look at the empty space by the fence. No one has been arrested in connection with these mysterious deaths. Since Todd was Loretta's boss, I convinced my superiors to let me lead the investigation. Todd's case is gathering dust on my desk. I miss Loretta. I just can't get rid of the good memories. It's like losing a sister. The women in my life have helped me forget Loretta as a wife. The children wanted a beautiful inscription on Loretta's gravestone. We agreed on Loretta Adams loved her children. Those earrings sit on the mantelpiece next to a photo of my children. Divorced and single moms with school-age children come by with food and offer friendship. I gladly accept all the food and some of the offers of friendship. Some of them are more talented, but they are all worth it. Todd's wife moved out of the area. Marilyn and I are just friends. She doesn't know that Tim and Loretta were lovers. I see no reason to cause her any more pain. Kelly and I see each other twice a month. To her, I'm like a hot sausage. I see Natalie a little more often. She makes love to me. It's hard not to fall in love with someone like her, but her scars run deeper than mine. She doesn't talk about her divorce, only that he cheated on her, so I suspect she's moved past revenge. I got my revenge. She's a better person than I am. I have nightmares about a body bag moving across concrete. I may not understand the occult, but I no longer reject it completely. I lay in bed and believed that if I started a new relationship and she betrayed me, I would do the same.